Welcome to the HIT Podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed with what we hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. If you missed earlier episodes, this week's episode is part 3. We are live from the floor here at the CAHR, and I was fortunate enough to be the keynote speaker, bringing the house down day one, last speaker on the stage, and we did 60 minutes on health insurance. If you missed parts 1 and parts 2, we are picking up where we left off today with part 3. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions, and without any further ado, let's get to the conclusion of the talk from the main stage. When we're talking about our claims, we're not just talking about medical, we're talking about pharmacy also. And you could do a whole conference on PBMs. Okay, so I'm gonna have to pick and choose the parts I dive down. And I don't wanna do like the whole big 3 equals bad thing, but I think it's important to talk about that kind of narrative. And we talk about the big 3, we're talking about CVS Caremark, Optum, Express Scripts, and if you throw in Prime, those guys have about 80% of the pharmacy market. Okay, and maybe when we talked about the Fogo de Chao analogy earlier, and we said, hey, take some meat that appeals to you, take whatever else, maybe just learning that inside of your healthcare plan, the pharmacy is done by a different entity, like maybe that's enough in and of itself. But let's dive a little bit into it because I think it's relevant to say, what is a PBM? They're kind of the middleman. Okay, the connective tissue that says, hey, look, you've got drug manufacturers out here producing drugs. You got your employees that need a drug. And then you got the pharmacist that's dispensing the thing, right? So we're going to connect these dots and we're going to hit the plan spend. So that's a different entity. The issue is Prime is jointly owned by 19 of the blues, right? CVS is Aetna, Optum is Cigna, and they're owned by the carriers. They're vertically integrated now, which doesn't necessarily need to be an issue, except for the part where when you look at kind of what they bring to the table, the reason that they had kind of a pitch to the American public is, hey, I do so much buying with the drug manufacturers that I get great volume discounts. So when you and your employees need a drug, well, you're going to want me in the equation because I get great pricing with the drug manufacturer. As it turns out, that didn't actually translate so well to what was hitting the plan spend, because what hits your guys' plan spend is not the cost of the drug, it's what the PBM charges. And they use something they called spread pricing. And while there's 60 to 70 different PBMs operating in this country, so someone else can be that connective tissue for you, someone like a Mark Cuban drags this into the public light recently with his sort of cost plus, where he says, I have no volume with these drug manufacturers. I've never purchased a thing from them in my life. I'm going to call them up. This drug hit my plan for $10,000. Ring, ring, how much is it? It's $28. 28 bucks? Yeah, but I have no volume with you. Doesn't matter, it's the cost of the drug. These drugs are manufactured for pennies. And when I talked earlier about the lawsuit, the Johnson & Johnson lawsuit is specifically about the PBM and the benefits administrators being asked, do you live under a rock? How could you not know that they were taking us for a ride? To the point where Mark Cuban's thing is, this is his words, not mine. He's like, if anyone works with those guys, you are being ripped off, period, full stop. Because the examples were numerous. Drugs that are $5, $10, $20 being charged $5,000, $10,000, a bunch of money. So can someone else come in and middleman on our drug spend? Maybe a place for us to look at, because are our incentives aligned, right? And so when you look at spread pricing and Mark Cuban saying, hey, we're going to do cost plus. I'm going to show you the cost of the drug, and then I'm going to show you exactly how much margin I make on it, transparently. So the push in the pharmacy world, choosing vendors, has been transparency, transparency, transparency. What do you get per drug, and how do you bill me? Because ultimately, these are your guys' vendors. You're paying them So how are they keeping their lights on? And again, are their incentives aligned? Because they make the formulary. When your employees get told, oh, this is generic, this is brand, this is non-formulary, that's the PBM setting that. And when we talk about transparent pricing, the next thing we need to talk about are the rebates. Because this is a big piece of the pharmaceutical world. The rebates, just like when you go to an appliance store and you buy a $500 appliance, and it says, oh, but $100 manufacturer rebate, so you go home, you send that thing in, and you get back $100. Now the appliance kind of sort of technically cost me $400 because I paid the $500 and I got the $100 rebate. That's going on in the pharmaceutical world every day. Every day your employees are out there buying prescriptions, they're triggering manufacturer rebates. And historically, these have been held onto by the PBMs or the TPAs. But what's going on with those rebates? This is your money. This is your employees out there triggering them. And they're not hundreds or thousands of dollars. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars. Upwards of 20, 30, 50% of the pharmaceutical spend, which could be 30% of your plan. So when we look at that, we're like, hold on. Maybe upwards of 10% of my overall healthcare costs could be coming back to me. So what's happening with my rebates, and even contractually, what's rebatable in the first place, right? So these are all things that you want to take a look at, and some PBMs are even given the kind of gold standard out there now is just like a per employee per month max. So hey, maybe it's $130, $140 per employee per month max. So now I have full-blown transparency on how you make your money. I have maximums, and I know where my rebates are going. So a couple of those little pieces kind of on the pharmaceutical. It is a big part of our cost spend. So in the same way that on the medical cost spend, we look to say, all right, how can I insert zeros and double zeros? How can I put some downward pressure on my claims activity? We can do that on the pharmaceutical side as well with some good cost savings measures, right? So for example, things like international sourcing on expensive brands. Humira is a 6-figure drug. In Canada, it's 30 to 40% less. So can we work with a PBM, or can we get involved to have some member outreach to where we can say when and where applicable, if I can save $40,000 to my plan with some international sourcing on the expensive brand drugs, maybe that's a strategy we look at. Or on the specialty stuff, the manufacturer assistance programs, right? The patient assistance programs are out there, and you have to qualify, and your employee has to qualify, but if we're working in a proactive way to do that, maybe the manufacturer has to pay the whole cost of this drug. And we can get off the plan spend entirely. So looking at ways we can get drug costs off of our plan spend through some of these cost savings measures, important. Or even when we talk about J-codes. J-codes are a term in the healthcare world for a drug that's given via infusion or injection. And we talked earlier about some site of care stuff being important, super important with J-codes, right? And I'll give a Remicade as a quick example. It's used to treat rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's. It's a drug that can be administered in the patient's home for maybe $20,000, or it could be administered in a doctor's office, or it could be administered in a hospital outpatient for $80,000. So when clinically applicable, does it need to be given in the hospital outpatient and hit my plan for $80,000? Or can it be delivered right to the employee's home, which they might have preferred if we had some outreach for $20K? So that's a $60,000 swing. If I've got 5 or 10 people on this drug, that's $500,000 a year, where I'm getting my pharmaceutical spend down a little bit in ways that could be meaningful. So we're talking about risk and what we're going to spread out on the table and what we're going to hold. And ultimately, we're going to put back in the box and give to the insurance company via the vehicle, the insurance policy for them to hold. And being thoughtful about the idea that if we're open, like the newspaper story tells us, to counting images, and we're thoughtful about our zeros and double zeros, we might be able to inject some stuff on the medical side that maybe we take some of this claim liability on so that we get better pricing. And maybe we're thoughtful about putting downward pressure on that pricing. And we have some pharmaceutical liability that we take on, but we're thoughtful about our partners in the ecosystem. We're thoughtful about our strategies to put some downward pressure on this stuff. And we wind up ahead. So as we keep opening these boxes, we look at our risk, we look at our medical, we look at our pharmaceutical, and I see a box here that's future RX trends. Sorry, I shouldn't have opened that box. Apologies. Don't feed them after midnight. Don't give them any water, whatever the expression is. Scary. When you look ahead, pharmaceutical trends, you're welcome to think that it looks like this, and I'll talk about their shirts say GLP-1 and pharmacogenomics. The GLP-1 stuff is a really big thing, okay, guys? So that's the Ozempics, the Mounjaros, the kind of drugs that are used to treat diabetes and obesity, and they work. They're really successful. It's like a whole new class of drug. I was listening to a physician talk in preparation for this speech today, and he was likening it to like penicillin. He's like, oh, this is a whole new class of drug. These things are here, and they work. The issue is that we're going to put on our planned fiduciary hat right now. The drugs are, at best, $10,000 a year. Drugs? Okay, well, they're used to treat diabetes and obesity. Right now, less than 2% of our members are taking GLP-1s. And they already account for 9% of our prescription spend. 9% of our Rx spend, which, again, when we talk about healthcare, the healthcare might be your company's top 2 or 3 most expensive thing on the budget. And we're supposed to be stewards of this hugely expensive thing where my business is shelling out money. And I'm sitting here thinking, I got to get payroll raises, I got to do this, that, and the third. We're understaffed, we need bodies. Where's all this money going? A bunch is going to healthcare. 30% of your healthcare on average is going to prescription. And 9% of that is going to GLP-1s. So when I sit here and I talk about MSK and diabetes and downward pressure, there's probably 3,500 point solution vendors out there. You do not want to get shiny object syndrome and go chasing after something that's going to save you 0.5% on something that impacts 0.5% of your claims for an overall couple $100. Thanks, I got too many things to deal with. But when they're big ticket items, they're worth the conversation. And the GLP-1s already being 9% of my RX spend with 2% of my population on them, guys, they're used to treat diabetes and obesity. Under that definition, over 40% of Americans will be eligible for the GLP-1s. What if I saw a 25x increase in utilization of these products that, again, are $10,000 a year? So I think it's imperative to look forward, especially if what we're going to do is start owning claims liability. We're going to get really thoughtful about our insurance, like, hey, that guy was right. We want to design our plans really, really well, not only for class action lawsuits, and not only to get that single mom a better premium deduction, but to get the business and to do this, that, and the third. Okay, well, as the plan sponsor, if over half the people that take a GLP-1 will be off it within a year, and almost all those people are going to put the weight back on, and also for the long-term benefit of it, how long do I have my employees? What's my average turnover? How long before I start to see the positive impacts of this stuff? Well, then maybe we talk about prior authorization, where, hey, you have to have a lab diagnosis of diabetes or a BMI threshold of 40%, or maybe some step therapy or lifetime maximums, but some sort of a conversation, to be honest, about the fact that this is a big planned spend and it's coming down the pike, and I might be in charge for my company of plan spend. So I want to kind of look at this stuff and be thoughtful about this stuff. Pharmacogenomics is fascinating. We're on the cutting edge of healthcare, and it's looking to see, putting these two words together, right, pharma and my own genes, how does my body metabolize drugs? Or even cell and gene therapy, where we're sort of going into my own gene to sort of edit it and fix something that might be causing me an expensive issue, or adding other cells, maybe my own cells or someone else's cells, to fix an issue. This is cutting edge medical stuff, but when we're talking about expenses, a lot of this is rare disease. And we think, well, rare disease, the definition is affects fewer than 200,000 Americans. Except for the part where there's 10,000 rare diseases and more being discovered every day. So now you got 10% of your members that are impacted by a rare disease. And I'll give you just one quick, oh my God, are you serious? One single drug was just approved. This one drug costs $4.25 million. This one drug. So as we look to the future, these drugs are giving people that 5, 10, 15 years ago had no hope at a normal life. or a near normal life. So these are beautiful medical advancements, but we're sitting here talking a little bit about cost, and my whole point is, number one, awareness, and number two, strategy. Having these types of conversations, because we're saying, hey, we can design this stuff to where we win over time, but not if we're going to let ourselves get blindsided by big, huge things kind of coming down the pike. So that's a little bit about kind of touching upon that for a sec. Okay, ending with a little bit of alphabet soup. Reference-based pricing, or RBP, is a strategy where employers say, hey, listen, not only am I going to self-fund my medical, but rather than renting a network, I'm not going to rent the Cigna network or one of the Blues or whatever, we're going to do reference-based pricing, where what we do is use Medicare. It's already got an established dollar figure that it's going to give those providers, and we'll use a multiplier of Medicare, maybe 150% or 200% of Medicare, and say, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Employee, see any provider you want, and when you see that doctor and we get the bill, we're just going to explain to them, hey, you saw my patient for XYZ reason, and we're going to reimburse you 150% of Medicare. Okay. Some of the providers are kind of not loving this because it doesn't pay them as much as they would like, so they're really pushing back. Some of the better RBP vendors are saying, all right, well, if anyone gets a balanced bill, send it to us, and then we will pay that provider in full. So your employees are not going to ultimately own this. All they own is their copays or deductibles, but we're going to use Medicare as a reimbursement strategy. Fine. It's out there. Another kind of strategy, direct primary care. If my note on RBP is, it was more popular 5-ish years ago, good luck if you try it. My note on direct primary care is I'm fascinated by it. We dive into it further, it's worth a conversation, but the idea is sort of carving the primary care out of a plan and saying, look, when I told my employees, you find a primary care doctor, I Googled it, I called, 10 people, 15 people before I even found one taking new patients. And it took 6 weeks before I can get in to see the doctor. So in places where applicable, can we just hire our own physician? Augment that person with AI? Augment with virtual visits? Maybe fold something into where we say, hey, this is an interesting way to get this part of the risk off the plan. We'll just pay a doctor a rostering fee, and we'll have our own direct primary care physician. So when and where applicable, something to look at. ICHRAs, ICHRAs, the individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement, is another very interesting strategy, and I want to talk about a couple places where it's deployed, but I'll define it first. The ICHRA is an employer saying, I am satisfying my group health care portfolio by basically just turning everybody over to the individual market. They're all going to buy individual plans. But what we really want to be careful about in all of this conversation, the MERPs, the self-funding, the ICHRAs, is we don't want to get too wonky with our insurance theory without thinking about employee experience, right? I mean, you can't design something that employees hate and aren't going to want to use and they're going to kick down your door on, right? So having one eye to kind of both, I think, is important. And that's where if we are looking at ICHRAs, someone like Bavy, who is backed by Milliman, they make a cool marketplace. So all your employees can go into the marketplace, they can shop, they help you, and we work with the broker and consultant, but to figure out what do I need to contribute towards these individual plans to be compliant, and then my employees, all they see is their cost minus my contribution, right? So it's just like their deduction, and then you get a report and you kind of build up the deduction. The ICHRAs are only sometimes a wholesale strategy. Sometimes employers go, look, and maybe it's like we're super upside down on Kaiser, but we want 2 different carriers, so forget it, we're just going to blow the whole group thing up, and everyone's going to go to the individual market. Fine, sometimes. Or they could be strategically deployed because they can sit beside your group plan in certain carve-out caveat ways, but maybe you've got a group insurance plan, and now with COVID and remote work being a thing, I've got some employee dropping into some state where I have no nexus in, and my healthcare plan's not performing that well for the employees. So I've got everybody, in these couple regions, and I got one guy that just dropped into Alabama, and their only providers are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, and we've got some other network. Fine. Carve that person out and let them buy the ICHRA, right? So we don't have to necessarily do it all together. We can piece this stuff together in thoughtful ways is kind of the main theme of today's conversation. Or maybe you're self-funded and part of your regions are blowing up the plan. It's just this one region over here where that's all my claims. Okay, well, maybe to save the plan, we ICHRA this piece, because their individual plans are community rated. So I don't care how high your claims are. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama might, but it's not my problem, right? So get them off the plan, and maybe we can have a self-insured product over here. So piecing some of these things together in sort of thoughtful and meaningful ways can also be a good and interesting way to redesign our healthcare benefits. Okay, as we get to kind of the tail end here, talking about ancillary coverages, right? Meaning the non-medical stuff, because I know that every time we talk to an insurance company rep that works for something that's not medical, they're like, your whole conversations are dominated by medical. I'm like, I know, but it's the majority of the cost. So we spend a lot of time on the medical, but that doesn't mean we don't want to also be thoughtful really quick about some of the rest of the products. So just to give some food for thought on the non-medical stuff. Risk exists in this world too, right? There's no $1 million babies in dental or vision. So where they've got better actuarial superior values, maybe we can look to self-fund the dental or put that beside our dental HMO or self-fund the vision, right? So we can get creative with the ancillary stuff too. And or when we're looking kind of at the rest of our non-medical portfolio, are our disability policies up to date with different state programs, right? So for example, in the state of California, it's a 70 to 90% income replacement. Is our product still some 60% and it's not integrated with the state? I'm just paying for some benefit no one can ever use. Or I've got employees in other states maybe to where it's just they're never going to use the disability. Different states have different things. So as we roll this stuff out, being thoughtful about I'm only paying for what I need to pay for, and if they're already taking out taxes anyways, and the state's going to pay for it, designing those things to go in line with that. And or on the disability side, you've got stuff like the executive disability, the IDI, which is if I've got employees that are too high of an income earner, maybe my group disability plan caps out at a certain level. Maybe it's, the long-term stuff is 60% to $10,000 or $15,000. And rather than redesigning the whole plan for these 4, 5, 10 executives, I can buy an individual executive disability policy that brings that person closer to whole. Because number one, when I have to sit down with the executives, they don't like hearing, hey, technically, these employees get 60% income replacement. When you look at it, because the way the policy is built, you're only going to get like 30% income replacement or 40%. Now, I know you're earning more, but could you live off 20% of your income or 30% of your income? So introducing these policies on the ancillary side is one other sort of thoughtful place. Then we talk about the group benefits that we wanted to kind of keep in mind. Other stuff, just to kind of close out, where people ask, like, all right, well, let's really get creative. Let's dream with me. The fertility space is huge and booming. Pet insurance is getting interesting. Even guys like Tuned, who I also had on the podcast, it's like an audiology benefit for hearing aids and stuff. So if you're looking for that kind of one last takeaway or little nugget that you might not have been overly aware of, that's kind of something I wanted to kind of introduce here at the end. So as we get out, I just want to thank everybody for the time and sort of say, look, this is not a commercial for any one specific strategy. This is the idea that we can introduce zeros and double zeros to our roulette wheel to where we win over time. This is the idea that if we're just going to hand over an insurance policy to the insurance company, they are not going to charge me for what's probable to happen. They're going to charge me more. So if I can save enough, even if I can save enough and then ultimately buy other policies for the unlikely stuff to ensure I don't blow up, then now I'm kind of thoughtfully designing my insurance plan. And if I am going to do that and I am going to take on some extra risk, what strategies can I use to put downward pressure on where my claims might end up? What type of point solutions? What type of pharmaceutical ideas can we sort of put together to make sure that we win over time? And then when we get to the ancillary stuff, what are some ideas there? So that's a little bit of the overview. I mentioned here on the slide, you may have to use the periods when searching the HIT podcast, but we are here, we're filming. I had many people stop by today. I hope we have many more stop by tomorrow to sit in and to film with us, to be brave. And then overall, the goal with the podcast, and it's kind of lofty, but I would like to be a mandatory follow for anybody in benefits, because we drop once a week. It's a 15-ish minute episode, and we cover a lot of this stuff. So not asking a lot of the listener, but sort of saying, hey, listen, These episodes are bite-sized, digestible. We talk about kind of relevant information on the podcast. Now, when they handed me this slot to speak, they told me you're going Cinco de Mayo. You talk about group insurance. If I know one thing about group insurance, it's let's dive into nuance right in the afternoon, and where I'm the guy standing between everybody and their cocktail or mocktail or socializing or kind of whatever's going on. So I appreciate everybody's time and attention so very much. That's it for today's presentation. Stop by the booth, follow the podcast, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you guys very much. That's all the time we have for you here on the show. Catch our whole highlight series. We're excited about doing the sights and sounds from the conference. So join us next week. Blessed to be here. Thank you to our sponsors, Rula, Excel Health, TrueHue, the guys who keep the lights on, Montage Insurance Solutions, and thank you guys for watching. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.